Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle.
Let me start today's episode with a question. What if the secret to stronger business performance wasn't found in bigger budgets or stricter policies, but in something as simple as recognition? When people feel genuinely seen and valued, they don't just show up, they thrive. That's exactly what today's guest, Ayesha Tallat, has been championing at. With over 17 years of experience leading human resources across MNCs, startups, and even family run businesses across the Middle East, Pakistan, and Southeast Asia, Ayesha blends business strategies with a human first approach. Today, as the founder and lead HR consultant at LinkedUp, she partners with organizations as a fractional HR leader, helping them build high performing cultures where people actually want to show up. Aisha, a very warm welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with you today. But before we dive in, would you like to share a bit about your professional journey so far?
Sure. Thank you so much, Shabana, for the warm introduction. I'm feeling happy about how you introduced me. And sure, definitely. I think you've covered most of it. I'm an HR professional operating out of Middle East. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I have about 17 years of HR experience, worked for different companies. I think the interesting part could be that I studied IT and finance, and I ended up building a career in HR. So a bit of blend of all the worlds, I would say. And now I'm excited to have my own firm, LinkedUp HR Consultancy, which focuses on human first HR.
Amazing. That's so good to know. So let's set the tone of the podcast today with the very first question. So, what does human first HR mean to you, Aisha? Like, how does it differ from the traditional HR approach?
That's a very interesting question, Shabana. Thank you for asking. So, definitely, when we talk about HR, human resources, we call human beings resources. However, when we get in the rigmarole of the corporate world, we forget that we're dealing with people. And we as HR, I'm talking about my HR self that forgets sometimes that, we're talking about people here as part of the resource of the organization. So human first HR is about designing your company's HR policies, processes, everything, keeping your talent and your human as a resource in mind, rather than having a rigid process policy and then fitting people into it. It's about having an agile approach where we design the whole system around your people who deliver your talent. So that's what I call a human first HR approach.
Okay, that's very genuine. Like it's such a refreshing way to, look at it. So it really shows how HR is actually moving beyond processes into something which is more people centered, right? So let's then talk about what that means for culture. Like how does a human first HR mindset directly impacts employee engagement and the overall workplace culture?
Sure. So I think what I have seen in my little humble experience throughout my career is that I've seen all kinds of organizations. I've seen MNCs, I've seen family businesses, I've seen consultancies, I've seen also startups. So I believe and I feel there is a little bit I would say part of the success formula where which is engagement, which is a literally free of cost ingredient that any organization can blend into their organization and strive for success. So definitely what I feel is that having a human centric HR organization is basically, and making it part of your culture is the key ingredient to be successful in today's time. The world is moving so fast with AI, with chat GPTs, and with people going away from people to system, which is all, by the way, I'm doing myself as well. So I think what's important is the engagement of whatever little organized people you have left in your organization. And when I say that making it part of the culture, it comes from leadership. It's not a standalone HR activity to perform. It's your leadership team that drives the culture. However, HR is the trigger factor and leadership is the enablement factor. So this combination has to work for the organization to have a culture-rich organization. And when we talk about human first, Something as small as, I would say, that if your leadership start just, something as small as making people seen is enough to start or kick off the engagement culture. We work day in, day out. We do operations. 70% of our job at whichever level is operations. However, to make people feel seen by valuing what they are contributing is the job of the leaders. And this is the ingredient. This is a very small, minute human first HR step that if leaders start doing that and HR builds a culture and recognition around these little factors, it can really play a big role in setting the engagement of the organization.
Correct. I mean, I agree. The connection between engagement and culture is powerful. And recognition, doesn't just change how actually employees feel, it changes how businesses perform overall, right? So,
Yes.
moving on to our next question, then, what role does human first HR play in driving organizational performance and success in the long run?
I think it's directly linked. I think it's directly linked. Human first HR boosts retention, accelerates innovation, and reduces burnout. Factors that impact the bottom line. In a region like Middle East, where talent mobility is high, competition is extremely intense, organizations that prioritize human first approaches win by becoming the employer of choice and sustaining long-term performances. When I see at the market trends, when I see at the real-time data from different experts survey out there, people leave organization. Even the strongest talent is leaving organization in 2 to 3 years. So why is that happening? They're getting paid well, and sometimes they're switching for small changes like, oh, I just want to focus on my peace at this point, or my well-being, or my family life. So I think it's important to have human first HR from day one the person joins, so that they do just feel valued in terms of financial stability. They feel valued and excited to go to work and contribute and really really feel part of the family. So I think, and that comes from driving this as a culture, driving the uniqueness of people, and the talent they bring to the table, kind of recognizing that will drive the organizational performance culture for long term and long term success.
Correct, correct. So, I agree. But then many companies, they talk about valuing employees, but they fall short in practice. So, in your experience, like, what are the biggest barriers you have seen to, taking a recognition-driven and human-first HR approach?
So I see that. That's a very good question. So I think there is a bit of a conventional approach to it where people feel, okay, this person wants to resign, increase his salary, retain them, or they wait for the resignation paper to come in and then they say, okay, now give a counter offer, retain this person, and there is a bit of a chaos in the organization. And HR really thrives out of it sometimes. Oh, we're retaining this employee and we need to do this and that, which has become part of their DNA. However, that's a very short-term solution. What I feel is that there's so many practices that reward is definitely not to be undermined. It's something very, very important, but then recognition. Recognition is the key part. And recognition, when I say, it's not just the annual increment or the annual, I would say, rating, that would say it has to become a habit of everyone in the organization. Something as simple as a thank you card or a public acknowledgement on a LinkedIn platform is very powerful. Leaders should also, start thinking on these ways. And I'm not saying it's not happening or it's a unique concept I'm introducing. All of this exists. Nothing is new. It's just that we have to make it part of a practice. And sometimes it internalize, get so used to the standard ways of working and the pressure of P&L that sometimes external consultants like ourselves needs to get engaged to focus, to bring focus in a dedicated way on this channel where employees feel, like I said, valuable. Very important, and being a life and career coach, certified coach, I speak to a lot of executive leaders, and I feel there is a sense of fear when it comes to modeling vulnerability. So I think that's a very interesting aspect to it. Sometimes, and I've always seen teams thriving if the leader is vulnerable. I'm not saying go and share your family problems or your issues at home or XYZ problems, but it's about sharing your own challenges that you are facing at work, not by talking bad about your boss, but how is the challenge that you're facing and your ex team member can help you really deliver it. It makes that person feel valued, acknowledged, and that sense of belonging with the manager, that he's kind of providing psychological safety to the manager's task. So that's big. That's a small win, and that's big. So leaders can really, if they change their way they deal with their team and bring a little bit vulnerability and openness rather than just being senior authoritative people, it can really go a long way. And I've had such inspiring leaders throughout my career as my bosses. So I feel that it really contributed to my success as well. So these are the small things that I feel we can champion through focus, and they can really big impact to the culture of the organization.
Correct, correct. I mean, those challenges are very real and they actually often go unspoken. But then what you said, I completely agree. And that's actually, in fact, inspiring because, when leaders act differently, cultures actually shift. But uh,
Hmm.
but HR professionals themselves also need new tools or new ways of thinking to actually make this real, right? So
Hmm.
that brings me to the question that what new skills or mindsets do HR professionals need today, to practice human first HR effectively?
Hmm, hmm. So definitely, I think a lot of it. HR field, I strongly believe HR mindset, HR knowledge, if not updated, will could be a huge big challenge for the success of the organization in the coming times. So definitely, I feel it's the right time for the HR professionals, including myself, to update, upgrade, and realize how can they really bring value to the bottom line and really bring positive impact on the P&L of the organization. And when I say this, the instant hit that most of the HR people would feel in their head is the cost effectiveness, is cutting cost, getting cut down, because HR can play a big role, but stop, pause. No, I'm not advocating that. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's the need of the hour, and if it's needed, should be done. But it's also about understanding the business acumen, having the understanding of which policies can really be the driver to bring business success. For example, and also key factor that while designing these, I'll come to the example, but while designing these policies which can really bring value to the P&L, we don't have to lose empathy. Empathy is the core and heart of HR professionals. So keeping empathy in mind while designing policies, but also ensuring flexibility around how can things be treated differently. And now I'll give the example, for example, the salary structure policies. A lot of companies are now moving, struggling companies or startup companies are now moving from a fixed base salary, fixed cost heavy salary, to a lot of I would say incentive based policies, which really works out fine. Or I would say, even in this domain, salary structure, a lot of companies are getting open to NDAs to work with other employers part-time or weekends or something. If that could be another source of income for an employer, why not have that policy in your organization if you feel your salaries are not best practice? Or for example, working hour flexibility. Now that's the trend. Remote working hours. That's remote working hours. Every company is now, MNCs are offering remote working hours per month, from which employee can work from home. And I know so many professionals who don't want to leave their organizations because, including my sister, who says that that we want to work for a company which is flexible, and I have my young children, I want to be home, and I still want to be a working mom. So if a company gives me slightly less money but have this policy, I would be more open to that. So these are some of the examples. And then now when we talk about trending things, you ask for what practices effectively we can do. I think we have to scale up the agility. I think moving away from rigid systems, rigid policies, and be adaptive to the practices that reflect changing employee needs. For example, recently for a very big airline company, we delivered a training on the AI in HR. And I was happy to see the vulnerability of the entire HR team to learn AI. and how they can create dashboards in AI, and how they can use AI to their advantage rather than having the fear, oh, AI is going to replace us. So, and I was so happy to see we set the tone right, and that agility really played, that openness really played a key role for them to adapt the examples, and they were really happy with the output of the dashboard that they had created in about 15 minutes in a session. So agility is number one. Number two is data driven approach. So HR has to work on data, and that's one of the key link towards HR and the P&L. They need to understand all kinds of data available in the company, even if it's a marketing data, or it's a P&L data, it's a numbers data, or it's I'm not just talking about HR data, I'm talking about outside HR, the data that the business operates in. They need to learn that, and they need to build your HR story based on that data. So the first is agility, the second is data driven storytelling, which is basically using analytics to highlight the human impact on performance of the company. So that's one. And number three, I would say, I'll repeat myself by saying empathy at scale. What I've felt in competitive environments, that empathy is becoming like a little bit of a undershadowed approach. It has to be put at scale. Not just listening to individuals, but again, using their input to design your system, to design your policies, to design the culture of the organization, and using it to their advantage. It's very important to use empathy to the advantage of the employer rather than getting information and all of those things. So I think these are some of the points that are very important, and practices, I would say, in these times, that can really bring the positive impact for an HR professional to grow within this market.
Correct. Absolutely. I completely agree with all your points. Empathy should not take a back seat when it comes to HR and the changing role of HR. So that's a very valuable perspective on the changing role of HR. So thank you so much, Aisha. I am really enjoying this conversation. But
Pleasure.
before we wrap up, let's leave our listeners with some practical steps, they can act on right away. So if I ask you, what are three simple actions organizations can take today to move toward a more human first HR approach, what would you suggest?
Sure, I think definitely. I think the more human first HR, first of all, humanize your policies, humanize your policies and processes. Review existing policy and processes through the lens of an employee experience and adjust it to be more people friendly. Again, I'm not preaching they should give all out benefits or they should take out benefits. You should definitely link it to the P&L of the company and understand what's happening. But there are smaller elements that you can really play on to bring the big impact. So definitely humanize your policies. That number one. Number two would be, I would say that, let me think. There are so many in my head. I really have to pick the right one. Yes, that would be embedding recognition in daily rituals. So reward should be there, but start your day with daily recognition rituals. It could be linked to your company values. It could be linked to the performance. It could be linked to behaviors. But have it as a discipline of the organization, recognizing people, and don't do it for the sake of doing. Do it on genuine and authentic criteria. So that is again a small win to bring in the human first HR approach. And the third is I would say that remove the hierarchies. And I'm not saying that when I say this, it's not about that, oh, everybody in the organization should be accessible or should not be accessible. I'm not preaching all of that. What I'm saying is that in terms of hierarchies, make people accessible to each other through listening, through making sure that as HR, you're creating listening platforms, you are implementing regular open feedback sessions, you are basically taking care of the employees based on their feedback, you are connecting top leaders and their challenges to the frontline team players and their challenges, and kind of removing the barriers between them. So I think these are the small three suggestions which can have a full-fledged plan, journey in place to be executed, that can bring a great, in my humble opinion, that can bring a great positive impact on bringing the human first HR into your organization, and bringing in a thriving culture.
Amazing. Those are very valuable points you have stated. Like, if I have to reiterate, you firstly mentioned humanizing the policies, then you
Yes.
emphasized on making recognition meaningful and authentic. And then,
Yes.
yes, and then you moved on to talking about how to remove hierarchies, not per se, but actually bring those changes on a human level, empathizing employees' experiences, right? Right.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aisha, for sharing such powerful insights today. I loved our conversation. But you know what stood out to me is how simple but meaningful appreciation or recognition, especially especially when practiced consistently, can actually shift culture altogether. It can fuel
Yes,
engagement and ultimately it drives performance. So,
definitely.
thank you so much. For our listeners today, the message is clear, right? Recognition is not a soft skill, it's a business strategy. And it's one of that which creates workplaces where people want to show up and they do their best work. So, we hope that this conversation has sparked new ideas for you and given you practical ways to make HR more human first in your respective organizations. So, thank you so much, Aisha, once again for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure, Shavana, and thank you so much for having me on board. And good luck to you and your platform for preaching in such great HR practices, and actually giving us the opportunity to reflect, rethink, and change what we can in our little capacity. So thank you so much
Of
for having me.
course. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you. So, let's wrap up this episode with one last message to our listeners. When you recognize people, you unlock results. And with that being said, take care and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast YouTube channel for new episodes.